Picture the most ordinary object in any building, any vehicle, any machine, any piece of furniture on Earth. A screw. You have driven thousands of them. You have never thought about where they came from. One company built a 20 billion euro empire from that invisibility, 20.7 billion euros in annual revenue, 2025, 86,000 employees across 80 countries, 44,000 salespeople on the road every single day. You have almost certainly never heard of this company. That is not an accident. That is the strategy. Every other company at this scale spends billions making sure you know its name. Nike, Apple, Red Bull. The brand is the business. Würth has never run a television commercial. It has never sponsored a stadium. It does not compete for shelf space at Home Depot or Lowe's. It does not need you to know its name. It needs the carpenter in Stuttgart to know its name, the plumber in São Paulo, the automotive mechanic in Houston, the electrician in Tokyo. 4.5 million customers know the name. The other 8 billion people on Earth do not. And Würth has decided that is exactly the right ratio. By the end of this video, I'll show you the specific legal decision Würth made in 1987 that made this company permanently impossible to buy, sell, or take public, and why that single decision is the reason it still exists as a family business today. Subscribe now before we get there, because that decision is the most underrated competitive moat in modern business history. Picture Germany in the summer of 1945. The war has just ended. Cities are flattened. Factories are destroyed. Every building that stands needs screws to stay standing. Every machine being rebuilt needs bolts and nuts. In the small town of Künzelsau in Baden-Württemberg, a man named Adolf Würth registers a wholesale company for screws and bolts. 2 employees, annual revenue, 80,000 euros. The product, screws. The market, anyone rebuilding anything in post-war Germany. Adolf Würth did not wait for customers to come to him. He loaded screws into a vehicle and drove to the workshops, the construction sites, the metalwork shops. The customer did not place an order and wait. The screw arrived in the hand of the person who needed it at the moment they needed it. Every major competitor operated from a shop or warehouse. Würth operated from the road. The difference was small in principle and enormous in consequence. 1945, Adolf Würth GmbH and Co. KG, Künzelsau. 2 employees, 80,000 euros revenue. 1949, Reinhold Würth, 14 years old, leaves school to become the company's second employee. 1950, at 15 years old, his first solo sales trip, Düsseldorf, 300 kilometers away. Adolf Würth knew he had a heart condition. He knew his time was limited. In 1949, he made a decision. He took his 14-year-old son out of school and brought him into the company. 5 years later, on December 14, 1954, he died of a heart attack at the age of 45. Reinhold Würth was 19 years old. The company had 2 employees. Annual revenue was 80,000 euros. He inherited everything, and then he ran. Here is the specific detail that makes Reinhold Würth's story different from a typical succession story. At 15, his father sent him alone to Düsseldorf, 300 kilometers from home, to solicit orders from customers he had never met in a city he had barely visited. He went with a case of screws and a price list. He returned with orders. By 17, he had his wholesale and retail trade license from the Chamber of Commerce. By 19, he was a 5-year veteran of direct sales. His father did not prepare him for a management role. He built a salesman, and the salesman built a 20 billion euro company. Picture a Würth salesperson arriving at a carpenter's workshop in Stuttgart on a Tuesday morning. He has been visiting this workshop every 2 weeks for 12 years. He knows what the carpenter builds. He knows which screw diameter the carpenter prefers for which application. He brings new products that match the carpenter's work. When the carpenter has a fastening problem, he does not search the internet. He calls Thomas, the Würth salesperson named Thomas, who has been coming every 2 weeks for 12 years. Würth has 44,000 salespeople on the road every single day across 80 countries. Not independent distributors, not franchise operators, not third-party retailers. 44,000 permanently employed Würth sales representatives. Every competitor in the fastening industry sells through distributors or retailers. The manufacturer ships and waits. Würth pays the full cost of every customer interaction. The overhead is vastly higher than any distribution-based model. But the direct sales force generates two things no distributor can replicate. Loyalty, because the carpenter does not switch from Thomas to a website, and intelligence, because 44,000 salespeople visiting 4.5 million customers return every day with information about which products are working, which are failing, which competitors are gaining, which problems remain unsolved. The Würth product catalogue contains 125,000 individual items. That catalogue was not designed in a boardroom. It was built item by item from information collected in 80 years of face-to-face contact with customers. 1962. First subsidiary outside Germany, the Netherlands and Switzerland. 1969. United States. 1970. South Africa. 1982. Australia. 1987. Japan and Malaysia. 1985. 1 billion Deutsche Marks in revenue. 1987. Vision 2000, a commitment to reach 5 billion euros by the year 2000. The company reached the goal on schedule. Type sales force. If you think the 44,000 direct salespeople are the real reason Würth is untouchable, or type screws if you think the product itself is the foundation everything else is built on. I read every answer. In 1987, the same year Reinhold Würth announced Vision 2000, he made a second decision. A legal decision, one that made Würth permanently impossible to acquire, sell, or take public. It is the most underrated competitive moat in modern business history. Right after this. Welcome back, picture 1987. Würth has just crossed 1 billion Deutsche Marks in annual revenue. Reinhold Würth announces Vision 2000, a commitment to reach 5 billion euros by the year 2000. And in the same year, quietly, he does something else entirely. He builds a fortress. Here is exactly what it is, and why no competitor has been able to touch Würth since. In 1987, Reinhold Würth transferred the company's assets into a set of family trusts, the Würth Familientreuhand, established under German law to hold the ownership of the Würth Group in perpetuity. The trusts are irrevocable. The company cannot be sold. It cannot be taken public. It cannot be acquired. No external investor can buy a share of the Würth Group. No private equity firm can strip the assets. No corporate raider can launch a hostile takeover. Reinhold Würth had watched what happens when family-owned industrial companies in Germany accept external capital. The priorities shift. The quarterly earnings report replaces the decade-long strategy. The dividend payment replaces the reinvestment. The shareholder meeting replaces the customer visit. The family trusts hold approximately 45% of the group's total assets as equity. That equity now stands at 9.7 billion euros, exceeding 50% of total assets for the first time in the company's history. The credit rating, A from S&P Global, confirmed year after year. The trust is not a tax strategy. It is a fortress built by a man who understood that the thing most likely to destroy a company built on patience and long-term relationships is an investor who has never visited a job site and never sold a screw. Here is what makes the Würth empire truly impossible to see from the outside. The Würth Group is not a single brand. It is a network of more than 400 companies. Roughly half carry the Würth name. The other half, the allied companies, operate under their original identities. A consumer walking into a hardware store may never encounter the Würth brand. A professional tradesperson in any country in the world almost certainly encounters a Würth subsidiary or allied company every single working week, without ever knowing it. Type trust. If you think the family trust structure is the single best decision Reinhold Würth ever made. Or type sales if you think building the 44,000-person direct sales force was the real masterpiece. One word, Würth makes 20 billion euros a year selling screws. It has 44,000 salespeople on the road every day. It owns a private bank, Liqui Moly, and 18,000 works of art, including a Holbein painting worth $100 million. The company cannot be bought, sold, or taken public. It is protected by an irrevocable family trust, and most people have never heard of it. That is not a failure of marketing. That is the strategy. The portfolio that Würth has built around the screw defies every assumption about what a fastener company should look like. Liqui-Moly, Germany's lubricant and motor oil brand, wholly owned by Würth since 2018. Annual revenue, approximately 500 million euros. International's Bankhaus Bodensee, a private bank, more than 94% owned by Reinhold Würth since 2005. The leading provider of loan financing to German professional football clubs, a screw wholesaler that finances professional football, and the art. Reinhold Würth bought his first piece in 1964, a watercolor by Emil Nolde. Today the collection contains 18,000 pieces: Picasso, Munch, Magritte, Max Ernst. In 2011, he purchased a Hans Holbein the Younger painting, The Madonna of the Family of Mayer Meyer, for $70 million. It is estimated today at over 100 million. The man who sells screws for a living lives like a Renaissance patron. He is 91 years old. He lives in Künzelsau, the same town where his father registered the business in 1945, in a 16th-century castle he meticulously restored. His daughter chairs the advisory board, his grandson chairs the supervisory board. Every other company in the tool and fastener industry chased consumer recognition, shelf space, television commercials, stadium naming rights. Würth chased customer relationships. Every other company tried to make its brand visible to the widest possible audience. Würth made its sales force visible to the only audience that matters: the trades, the workshops, the factories, the job sites, the places where screws are actually driven into material by people who do it for a living. 4.5 million customers know the name. That is enough. The screw is still the product. The salesperson is still the method. The trust is still the structure. And the family is still in Künzelsau, still in the same town, still running the same company, still selling the same product that Adolf Würth loaded into his vehicle 80 years ago in the rubble of post-war Germany. Subscribe, hit the bell. Adolf Würth died in 1954, 2 employees, 80,000 euros in annual revenue. The product, screws. His son took a case of screws to Düsseldorf at 15 years old and came back with orders. 80 years later, 20 billion euros. 44,000 salespeople. 18,000 works of art. A private bank. A 16th-century castle. Built on the most ordinary object in every building on Earth. The screw you never think about. The company you never heard of. That is not a failure of marketing. That is the whole point.